actually this one night that I was hallucinating under ayahuasca deep in the experience, I had a vision of Ron Paul came to me and I just heard that like nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. And I was like, oh my God.
Welcome to the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, your guide, your shining beacon of liberty, Marc Clair.
Welcome back, Liberty Lex Luthers, to another edition of Lions of Liberty, your home for great conversations about the ideas of liberty. And I'm pretty excited today. Not just about the great conversation that you're about to hear, but about the fact that I'm finally back home in the Lions of Liberty studios in sunny Los Angeles, California, after doing this show from the fine state of Utah for a few weeks. And Utah, you are lovely. Your people are nice. But Los Angeles, you are my home. And I'm glad to be back here to record this episode, which is episode number 248 of this program, which means, of course, that you can find the show notes featuring links to everything we discuss over at lionsofliberty.com/248 for your convenience. Today, we are sponsored by Health Excellence Select. And guys, with the open enrollment period coming up, many of you have major health care decisions to make. We want to help make it a little bit easier on you. So why not check out a great free market alternative to your standard Obamacare insurance by heading over to lionsofliberty.com/health. Here with me today is the co-host of the Part of the Problem show with our good friend Dave Smith. He is also the host of his own podcast called Mikedelic, which focuses on the benefits of psychedelics and argues the moral right to cognitive liberty for all human beings, something I know people that listen to this show are going to mostly agree with. You can find all of his work over at MikeBranc.com. I am pleased to welcome Mike Brancatelli. Mike, are you ready to roar?
I've been roaring so loudly all day that I've been ruining microphones. So I am so ready to roar. Yeah.
Destroying microphones with your roar. That's a powerful roar.
Man.
That's good stuff.
I've been roaring since the day I was born.
Cool, brother. Well, I just want to start right off. We'll dig into your various passions, but on your website, you mentioned that you're passionate about three things, and those three things are liberty, psychedelics, and personal development. So we're going to start with the first one. Why don't you just tell everybody out there how you first became interested in the ideas of liberty and in libertarianism overall? Yeah.
So it was kind of slow for me, actually. Like I was pretty much like apolitical, like my whole life. I just didn't care. And I graduated college like as soon as the second the recession hit. Like I graduated college and the recession was like full on. And I was like, oh, great. I'm going to have a hard time getting a job now. And a buddy of mine I had a roommate. I was living in New York City. He was going to Stern School, business school, and he was into business and the stock market and everything. And he was explaining all these things to me. And he one day just handed me this book, Peter Schiff, like how an economy grows and why it crashes. And he's like, yeah, take a look at this, man. It explains everything that you're not hearing on television. You know, I was like, what? I thought television is good.
Television tells me everything I need to know.
Yeah. I was like, what? I was like,
it tells me what to watch, what to eat, what to think. What more do I need?
Right. Like Homer Simpson, you know, just like television is my friend. So I read this book and it really hit home for me because I had just graduated school. I was having a hard time getting a job. I had these student loans. And this guy, Peter Schiff, was just breaking it down in such a way that really resonated with me. So I wanted to follow up more of his work. And that led to Tom Woods. And I was watching Tom Woods videos. And then I'm like, what is this Mises Institute? I've heard of Harvard. I've heard of all these other places. But what is this Mises, And so I discovered Mises. And I'm like, all these guys are super smart. And I had this moment where I was like, wait a second, I'm not crazy. Like all these kind of ideas that I've always kind of thought are being confirmed in like a legitimate academic way. And then I found Ron Paul, and then it was game over from there pretty much. Opened my eyes.
It's interesting that it's those guys, the Tom Woods, the Peter Schiffs, that led you to Ron Paul, because so many people that I speak with come at it the other way. They hear about Ron Paul, they see they saw him in the debate or something in 2008, they saw a YouTube video, and then they kind of went down that rabbit hole and found all these other guys. You kind of reverse engineered this thing. You kind of did it the other way. You stumbled upon this Peter Schiff book and kind of just stumbled backwards into Ron Paul in a way.
Yeah, it was like it's kind of a backdoor awakening, I guess I call it. And Yeah, because I just wasn't interested in politics. Like I still kind of have a hard time getting into the nitty gritty of politics, but I was very much interested in like psychology and philosophy, and I did want to kind of know about why we were in this recession and why I couldn't get a job and how come my student loan payments were, the interest was going up and all this stuff was happening to me. So yeah, it kind of led me to that way. And then yeah, Ron Paul, and then I just started obsessing about Ron Paul, and I started reading. I educated myself actually more out of college than in.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the case for, well, just about everybody at this point. But, you kind of bought into what we all bought into, what I bought into. You just do what you're told. You're told to go get a high school diploma, and then you're told to go apply to a college, and then you're told to get your college degree. Then you're told to, well, you could go to grad school, but most of you are just going to go get your 40-hour-a-week job, and that's going to pay off your student loans, so don't worry about that. No big deal. And then you're going to buy your house, you're going to have your wife and 2 kids, and then you're just going to go by the script. But that isn't really how reality actually works out for a lot of people, especially when a lot of people realize that the things they were told about how things are supposed to work don't really work that way.
Yeah, and I kind of always like since I was a kid, like I always had this feeling of, I just didn't like authority, didn't have any kind of respect for authority figures and stuff. But there was this kind of like overarching, if you don't do what you're told, you're going to be like a homeless bum on the street dancing for nickels. So I'm like, all right, well, I don't want to do that. So I'll go get my education. I'll do everything. But yeah, like you said, when it didn't really turn out that way. And then I just kind of like took a look behind this curtain and I discovered all these other guys that were just speaking the truth. And it was just undeniable from that point on,
Is that what really stood out to you about their works then? Whether it's Peter Schiff, whether it's Ron Paul speaking at a debate, is it really that feeling, that sense, more than the specific facts of the statements that they're making, which obviously, when they're true, those are going to resonate more, but it's more just the way that they say things where it doesn't feel like it's canned. It doesn't feel like they're trying to BS you. It feels like they're just really trying to speak the truth to you. And the way that the truth, I think, comes into our brain and comes across from someone that's truly passionate, it just registers in us so much differently than a politician just reading his script and reading his 17 talking points and directing you to his website. And that's something that Ron Paul never did. I don't think he mentioned that he had a website ever. I mean, he just went out there, ranted for as long as they would let him, and then moved along to the next thing. But I think that's what really stood out about Ron Paul to so many people, and what more so than even the specifics of the philosophy that he was trying to put forward was just the fact that it was so obvious that the guy is just different than everybody else because he's out there to speak the truth, or speak what he feels is the truth anyway.
Yeah, and look, it was just like I've always been sort of kind of aggressive in my approach with things through my life, kind of bucking the system, bucking authority. But I never really had like the academic like background of like why. Like I didn't know why things were wrong. I just knew something was wrong. So when I heard Ron Paul up there on the stage, just like, yeah, look, taxation is theft, abolish the IRS, these wars are unjust, people are dying. I was like, holy, like this is the bold, unapologetic conviction of this guy to stand up there. And he just, it was like cutting through the matrix. Like everybody else is just like, oh, these robot zombies up there with these platitudes and talking points and all this nonsense. And then you hear this guy speaking these things. And then, of course, I'm running over to the computer and I'm trying to download everything on Mises that I could find and confirm it all. And it confirms. It works out for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all sort of go through that phase when we first become interested in these ideas. We say, okay, this guy said some true stuff, and I need to find out more about it. But then you realize there's like 17 other people or organizations or whatever out there that have already written all these books about it. They're already giving all these seminars about it. And now we have the internet, so it's all right there. You don't have to like fly to Auburn to go get a seminar at the Mises Institute. You can sit in your apartment and get it. So right. I think we all go through that phase where we're sort of hyperly trying to feed ourselves information because that's how I was, and now I'm trying to do the opposite and sort of disseminate some of that information. But what really, I guess, what was it that made you hunger for more and thirst for more? Was it just an insatiable appetite for the truth?
Yeah, I think so. Because like I said, I always kind of had this feeling inside of me that whatever was going on was not really something that, people were always telling me, go to school and, listen to your teachers and do all this stuff. And I just always felt like I don't really want to do this. And I don't know why everybody's telling me that I should do this when I feel like I should do something else. So when I found an alternative way of thinking, when I found like answers to problems that actually made sense to me and that were backed up by people who are intelligent, people who have attended these universities and have these degrees, I did have a feeling like, oh, wow, this is something that's out there that now I can access and that I can actually fill my appetite for curiosity and truth. And that, I can maybe be a voice for spreading this message myself one day, I guess. I didn't know if I necessarily thought that at the time, but now I sure do.
So, Mike, this is not a question I don't think I've ever asked a guest before, but what I want to know now is, when did psychedelics come into play for you?
Cool.
I gotta think that in some way that they did sort of tie into your this is just an assumption I'm making, that into your quest for truth, your quest for knowledge in the world.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be the first person to ever get that question. That's an honor. And so all this stuff was kind of happening for me like around 2011, 2012. So right as kind of Ron Paul was running in that season, and I had I just read like Steve Jobs' biography. I was a huge like Apple nerd, like Steve Jobs. Like I would watch every keynote speech, and he mentioned how like taking LSD was a very important thing that he did in his life. And I was like, well, surely if this, entrepreneurial, successful guy says that, then there must be something to it. So I started to kind of read and research about it. And very similar to the way that I was kind of discovering libertarianism in this kind of backdoor way, this is kind of the same thing with psychedelics. I had just been taught my whole life that if you take LSD, you'll jump out of a window, you'll go insane. These are bad drugs that make people crazy. And I started to like read and research and dig and find out all this stuff about how they were kind of started at Harvard by Timothy Leary and this guy, Richard Alpert, who later became Ram Dass, went on to write a book called Be Here Now. So I started digging into this web and yeah, really, I just was like, well, I mean, this sounds like there's some more information that the state is keeping away from me. I better investigate this myself. And lo and behold, I took matters into my own hand and discovered that there's some benefits to these things, and there's some fun to be had for sure. And so yeah, it's kind of like I was discovering this at the same time I was kind of like digging more into libertarianism, and I kind of thought the two were kind of connected, as individual freedom, self-ownership, the right to explore our minds, expand our minds, and think differently, as my hero at the time, Steve Jobs, would have said.
Can you, I know a lot of people listening now probably, maybe, I'm sure some percentage of my audience has tried psychedelic drugs. I don't know what that percentage is. Maybe I'll post a survey in our private group at the Lions of Liberty Forum. You guys can all go and become members of that for free by just typing Lions of Liberty Forum in your search bar. Got to get my plugs in,
Yeah.
But can you maybe describe, what a psychedelic drug does to you? Or maybe you can even speak to a specific psychedelic that you tried. Or what was the first psychedelic drug that you actually tried? That's what I'm curious about.
I think when I was in high school, I think I kind of played around a little bit with some stuff, but I never really had like a profound experience. But the first real kind of profound experience I had was I went to a music festival and I took LSD. And once again, I said, like, this was in my obsession with Steve Jobs phase. I was reading his biography, and I really had like a thirst, hunger to be kind of like entrepreneurial in what I was doing. I was working for a startup at the time, and I was trying to think outside the box, think creatively. Like, how can I contribute something of value to the world? How can I be like this Jobs guy, And so I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it. But I took LSD for the first time in 2012, where I had this really profound experience. And it was nothing like what, the scare tactics that we've been told, in like the DARE program or whatever. I mean, it was beautiful. It was amazing. It was eye-opening. I felt really smart. Like I felt like I had a lot of information just coming to me. I felt like, and studies have shown now that LSD actually connects disparate areas, different areas of the brain that normally wouldn't be connected. They help actually improve and grow brain cells. Psilocybin mushrooms is another one that does that. And so I didn't know this at the time, but I definitely felt very turned on, very in tune, very keyed in, and I definitely felt a sense of euphoria. But most of all, I felt a large, just a consuming amount, amazing amount of knowledge. I was just consuming it all as it was coming in at rapid fire speed.
that's the interesting thing to me about psychedelic drugs is that from so many experiences that people describe, they're not something foreign to your body, foreign to your mind. They really are just really seem to be igniting parts of your brain that might not always be active, or as you stated there, sort of connecting parts of your brain in a different way. So they're not, and it's interesting. I mean, I've read a lot about DMT and how, I mean, that's something that our brain actually produces already. And so many of these chemicals that are in these psychedelic drugs are already produced by our body. These drugs just kind of give us a little extra boost or give a little impetus to sort of ignite them. Does that sound accurate to you at all?
No, yeah, definitely. And one of the most interesting things, I've always been interested in dreams. I've always had very vivid, very realistic dreams. And we now know that DMT is actually released in REM sleep through our pineal gland in our brains while we dream. So, it is kind of this weird thing. Like we all go to sleep at night, our bodies are motionless, but our minds are active somehow, some way. And we're all kind of just hallucinating, and nobody really knows exactly what's going on or why, but essentially that's what's happening. So it's very interesting to me that we also have other substances that can act as these tools that we can use in our waking state of consciousness to enhance certain things, whether it's like going to a movie, if you smoke a joint maybe before you go to a movie, or, there were tests on LSD in Stanford University back in the 60s when it was legal. They were giving LSD to people in Silicon Valley that were struggling trying to solve a problem. And I know a lot of people in Silicon Valley use that today as well, even though it's still illegal. Don't tell anyone. But it does kind of cognitively enhance you. And I look at it like that. I look at it as a tool to cognitively enhance certain functions that I'm doing, certain activities that I'm partaking in. And but just like anything, it could be abused. It could be used wrongly, But yeah, does that kind of answer your question or?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting that you even mentioned that so many people that, we would consider successful. I mean, starting with who you mentioned earlier, Steve Jobs, and many people in Silicon Valley use these drugs today to actually enhance the studies they're doing, enhance the research they're doing, enhance what they're doing professionally, where we have this stigma in the world where anybody who is a drug user of any kind, generically, is a loser, a failure, is obviously just down and out on their luck. But that really is not the case. That's not the reality with people who use any kind of drugs, including psychedelic drugs. And as you said, anything can be abused. I probably don't think there's many CEOs that have a heroin problem. Then again, maybe there are. I don't know. But point being, for whatever reason, and I don't know exactly where this started. I mean, Richard Nixon, basically, we know now, started the war on drugs overall, basically to throw minorities in jail and to crack down on peace activists. I mean, this is all completely known information. But I mean, why is this stuff still illegal in 2016? I mean, I think things are changing. Now, I know there's an organization who's actually, several organizations actually, that are starting to do work on actual medical research. And they actually have gotten permission from the FDA to do research using ecstasy. I know MDMA is something that they've started that on. And they have actually shown that it can help people with PTSD, people with other mental problems. And even just for normal therapy, it helps people that are just having marital problems. They can go and take a little MDMA and sit with a therapist 3 hours later, like things are way better because it, just like we said before, it helps them tap into, whether it's information or perhaps just emotions that they weren't really connecting with before. So by all accounts, these drugs have so many ways to help people. Whereas I don't think there's ever been an LSD overdose. I mean, I know that people have probably taken too much and maybe done something crazy because of that, but you can't really overdose on a lot of these substances. So what do you think that the push is for now, where they're still holding on to this and still keeping it illegal and making criminals out of people that use these drugs?
Well, I think there's a lot of people in the current power structure that's operating, that makes a lot of money off of this, makes a lot of money off of the war on drugs, that benefits off of it being illegal. And, that's so there's definitely financial aspects to it. I think there's a little kind of deep-rooted puritanical, ethical, moral thing to it as well. Somehow people that use drugs are perceived as, not proper individuals to be in a society, or not kind of people that we would want to have in society. But I think mostly psychedelics really kind of provoke this unconventional thought, and it's kind of hard to, if you want to have the biggest empire that the world has ever seen, it's kind of hard to control people if everybody's expanding their minds, thinking differently, discovering that they're all free individuals and that they all own themselves and they own their minds, and that peace and unity and love and all these things that people experience under these drugs are very congruent with like libertarianism and freedom and everything like that. So I think it's keeping people under control, which is kind of scary to think of, because I argue for the right to cognitive liberty, the right that we all own our minds, that we can alter our consciousness, that we can explore our minds whichever way we choose. But on the flip side of that, it's like, as technology advances, we already are seeing kinds of technology that can be implemented into your mind or something like that. So, this is not far off. This isn't really like paranoia. It's not a crazy way of thinking, because this is kind of happening. So we want to make sure that we're already seeing people, being reprimanded, free speech and PC culture. I would hate to be living in some kind of dystopian 1984 world where people are happily, voluntarily implanting chips in their head, only to have like another Edward Snowden have to reveal to us like, hey guys, the government's not a benevolent bunch of angels. They're actually feeding you controlled mind thoughts.
By the way, those microchips are controlling you.
Yeah. So it's like, people should really, or whatever. I'm very concerned about this kind of thing.
Mike, we're going to talk a little bit more about how psychedelics and liberty all sort of came together for you in just a minute. But first, I need to tell my listeners out there a little bit more about our great sponsors at Health Excellence Select. I'm a freelancer and I purchased my own health insurance, and I was hit by some serious sticker shock after the implementation of Obamacare. My premiums and deductibles were skyrocketing. And as someone who keeps myself pretty healthy, I knew that I was getting a raw deal for a product I simply didn't want. This caused me to seek an alternative, and I found an amazing alternative in the form of health sharing, a killer concept where healthy individuals agree to share their medical costs. That's right, it's a voluntary free market system for paying for your health care that also, thanks to an exemption, covers the Obamacare mandate. Our friends at Health Excellence Select have kicked it up a notch by creating a full service package to handle all of your health care needs. Trust me, I'm not just a proponent of health sharing, I'm also a client. This has been one of the greatest things I've ever done to leave the Obamacare system in favor of what our friends at Health Excellence Select are doing. To learn more, head over to lionsofliberty.com/health. And don't hesitate to give my man Jeff Cantor a call at 440-283-6849. Be sure to mention Lions of Liberty. So how'd this all kind of come together for you? How did you first hook up with Dave Smith, get involved in Part of the Problem? And I'm curious to what extent your co-hosting of that show kind of led to your current, your solo project here with Mikedelic.
Yeah, so I met Dave at a comedy club. I was doing comedy at the time, and we were just like hanging out. I don't know how this came up, but I was like, yeah, this guy Murray Rothbard. I just like, out of all places, you would never think that Murray Rothbard would be brought up in a green room at a comedy club.
And
but
he's like, what? You know Murray Rothbard?
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. It was like,
we're instant friends.
I mean, because I was kind of doing all this stuff on my own, really, like all this information and reading. I'd go out, I'd do stuff, and then I'd come home and I would just dig into like, human action or like something like that. I don't think I'm through with that book yet. I'm still like halfway through.
It's about a 20-year project. So
yeah. But like the first time I read Anatomy of the State, I was like blown away. I'm like, I have to tell somebody about this. So yeah, we met, we started talking. Dave mentioned that he, I think, did this podcast, but he wasn't doing it anymore. And I was like, oh, well, why not? And I just kind of went and listened to a couple episodes. He had this another co-host at the time, and I was like, hey man, I need to talk about these ideas with somebody. So I'll bring this back. I'll do whatever we got to do. Let's just do it. And we wound up actually just getting into a studio. A studio had contacted us and were like, would you guys want to do the show here? And we were like, yep. And then that was it. I think that was around 2014. So I've been doing the show ever since. And it's been great. And I'm very passionate about, psychedelics and psychedelic culture. And I think we're entering this psychedelic renaissance as we see. And I feel that the ideas of liberty and the ideas of of the ideas that the kind of psychedelic community preach and practice are in line with each other. And so I'm trying to create a show that I'm able to kind of express my ideas about the two topics and also bring other people on to talk about those things. And like you mentioned before too, self-development as well. I think that that's very important too. So I try and mesh that in. So basically Mikedelic is just a way for me to kind of explore and expound on more of my interests and my passions in a solo project.
And those three things, I mean, the more you think about it and the more we talk about it, they're almost the same thing. Liberty, psychedelics, personal development, they are all really about allowing your mind and your body to develop into the best version of itself. And in order to do that, you need the liberty to do that. You need people to not, be physically assaulting you every time you're trying to do different things with your mind and your body. Psychedelics help you connect all these things together and help you have kind of helped you grow mentally, grow as a person. And then that all ties into everything you're doing with your personal development. So it makes sense that you're interested in all these things.
Yeah. And once again, it's like, can we just be able to live and be free human beings without having to be thrown in a cage for wanting to better ourselves? So I really feel like by spreading this message, by getting people on my show to talk about these kinds of things, this is like the way that I can contribute to maybe trying to push the agenda forward, because you have to change the hearts and minds of people out there. You have to people have to be exposed to new ideas, and I think that there's a lot of great people out there. You yourself, you're doing a fantastic job. Roaring 24/7, and and there's then you have like the academic kind of people, the Tom Woods and that, and the some people in the political sphere like Ron Paul and so on. So, but I'm trying to communicate to people maybe of my ilk, people who I can relate to, maybe somebody who was apolitical, didn't care, and kind of turn them on in a way that I was turned on, and try and provide something for them that is a combination of things. You'd be surprised how many people actually have this combination of the love of liberty and psychedelics and personal development. So
I wouldn't be that surprised.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think the passion is the important thing here, because that's one thing that I think is very, very clear from listening to Part of the Problem and just your show as well. The passion that you and Dave both have it just comes across. It's not something you can fake. I mean, it's so real when you guys just get on a rant about something that you're not reading a cue card, you're not reading a pre-planned promo, and that's something that's so amazing about the podcasting world, about the way people are starting to get this information to them, because you're not going to get that kind of passion from AM radio. You're not going to get that kind of passion from a formatted talk show. It's just not there. Whereas in podcasting, we have the freedom. There's that word again, the liberty to do whatever the hell we want. Including, hey, you can take acid and go record a podcast if you want. Maybe you have. I don't know.
As long as you're not harming anyone else. And yes, I have. I have engaged in microdosing, which is a phenomenal activity. In fact, microdosing LSD was said to be something that would replace what was it? Aldous Huxley. Yeah, the author Aldous Huxley said if LSD had not been so harshly scheduled, like as a Schedule 1 drug, like it is, that it would have replaced Adderall. So there you go. So it's pretty cool. And by the way, the only way to kind of find out about these things is through direct experience, but education, responsible use, and then just find out for yourself. You know what I mean? I'm not telling anybody that this is the way to go or the only way to go. I mean, there's many ways to go. This just happened to be the way for me. Who would have known that Ron Paul and LSD could have been something that you could say in the same sentence, but that's yeah.
Hopefully you have a chance to meet Ron Paul sometime and tell him how much how he merges with LSD in your world.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just share a quick story. I had a recent trip on ayahuasca, and
that's amazing, because literally I was about to ask you about your ayahuasca experience. I swear to God. So amazing that you brought that up yourself. So go for it.
Oh, cool. So I'm in the jungle in Peru, in the Amazon jungle, and I'm sitting in this circle of people from all around the world. And
can you just stop and just let people know what ayahuasca is for those that are not familiar with it?
Yeah, sure. So ayahuasca is a combination of two plants, chacruna and I won't get into the specifics, but basically ayahuasca is a very strong psychedelic. It's been used in indigenous ceremonies in cultures in Peru and whatnot, and it's basically it contains DMT in it. And DMT, dimethyltryptamine, the things that we were talking about before, it's released in your pineal gland when you dream, when you sleep. It's responsible for these kinds of quote unquote hallucinations that we experience while we dream. So yeah, ayahuasca is this kind of like ceremonial sacrament that's been used by indigenous peoples. And I went there to experience it because I've heard that it really kind of opens you up and connects you. And it's good for people with suffering from depression or addiction, or, like I had said before about self-improvement kind of things. I think there's always room for improvement, and I'm kind of willing to go and explore by any means necessary how to be a better version of myself. And so that's kind of what I did, and I went to go explore this ancient sacrament, ayahuasca.
How long does an ayahuasca trip last?
Whew.
Approximately. I know you probably didn't have a timer on you, but
yeah, time does not exist. What is time? It can last, I think, a long time. So probably 6 to 8 hours, I think, something like that.
And you were in what country were you in? You're in the Amazon jungle?
Yeah, I was in the Amazon
jungle. You're guided by they have these shaman guides that kind of are there to sort of guide you through the trip. Is that how it works?
That's right. Yeah, they have this. The place I went to is amazing. I mean, it's run by Western guy, I think a guy from the United States, and
some
so
guy
they
named
have
Steve. You show up in the jungle, you're like, "Hey, I'm Steve." Wait a minute, you're my guide. You're my shaman.
Yeah, right. He's just wearing Birkenstocks. He's like, "Does this count?" Like,
what's up, bro?
but it is it's they had all these kind of Western doctors. This guy Gabor Mate, he's a leading physician that is an expert with addiction and a best-selling author. His daughter-in-law was there to help. She's a naturopathic doctor, and they had all these professional people there to kind of assist with the functioning of the place and to assist with the people there. And then they had the indigenous, the shamans, the Shipibo people. So it was this interesting mix of the indigenous cultural people and the Western doctors and whatnot. So I felt very safe. I felt very comfortable there, and it was a very eye-opening experience. Actually, there's one night that I was hallucinating under ayahuasca, deep in the experience. I had a vision of Ron Paul came to me, and I just heard that, like, nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is, like, who would have thought that I'd be tripping on ayahuasca in the jungles in the Amazon jungle in Peru and have a vision of Ron Paul. Yeah.
That is freaking awesome, man. And you can hear more about that experience by listening. I believe you did a whole podcast episode describing your ayahuasca experience. So we'll link to that. And why don't you just tell everybody before we let you go how they can find Mikedelic, how they can find Part of the Problem, how they can find all of your writing over at MikeBrank.com. Although I guess I just told them.
Yeah, so you can go to Mike Brank. I'll give them a clue on the spelling though, because sometimes people mistake it. Yes. So it's Brank with a C, BRANC, and then Mikedelic is Mikedelic, Mikedelic. And yeah, you can find me on iTunes. If you go to my website, I have everything on there. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Brank. And yeah, we're on iTunes. And Part of the Problem is also on gasdigitalnetwork.com. You can go there, sign up. We do a live video show that you have access to over there.
Well, Mike, it's been an absolute blast. And if you guys aren't listening to Part of the Problem and Mikedelic, then what are you waiting for? Go click off and give them a listen as soon as you finish this episode.
Thanks a lot, Mark. It was a pleasure talking to you as well.
Mike, it's been a blast. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with the great Mike Brancatelli. I do encourage you to check out everything he's involved in, and especially go over to MikeBrank.com and check out his writing. We didn't really touch on that too much, but the guy does some really interesting stuff. He gets really philosophical, and as you guys know, that's what I like to do here as well. So be sure to go check out Part of the Problem, Mikedelic, MikeBrank.com. You guys will not regret it. And hopefully you will not regret continuing to listen to this program and becoming a part of this conversation. And if you're not already, I encourage you to become more a part of this conversation by joining our private Facebook group. That's the Lions of Liberty Forum. You can find that by just typing Lions of Liberty Forum in your little search bar. It should pop right up. And as long as you look like a real person or maybe have a mutual friend or two, someone we can identify you as a libertarian type person, someone that should be in this forum, not say a Nigerian prince or something of that nature, we'll let you right in and you can join this great conversation. And if you continue to enjoy the conversations that you hear on this program, 3 times a week, every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, when my good man John Odermatt steps in with Felony Friday, his weekly look at the criminal justice system. Well, there are a few ways you can help us out, and really the number one thing you can do to help this program is to share it with a friend. Maybe you have a friend who's into psychedelics, but they're not all that political. Well, maybe this would be a good episode to share with them and get those wheels turning a little bit about the ideas of liberty. And admittedly, maybe this is not the best episode to share with Grandma, but either way, word of mouth is how this show has grown and how it will continue to grow. Now, besides sharing the show, besides telling your friends about it, the number one thing that helps the show grow is by you guys leaving ratings and reviews for us, particularly on iTunes. iTunes is still by far the largest market share of podcasts. The algorithms that iTunes use is largely based on the number of subscribers, the number of ratings, and how good those ratings are. So 5 stars would be great, and the number of reviews. So if you guys can head over to iTunes, even if you don't use iTunes to listen, if you can leave us a rating, a 5-star rating, and a great review there, that is a huge, huge help. We, of course, are on many outlets. We're on Stitcher, we're on Google Play, on TuneIn. Ratings and reviews on any of those outlets, frankly, help us. But iTunes is the major one. That's where we're turning most of our focus to. So any help there, greatly appreciated from you guys. Now, this coming Wednesday, as you guys know, if you're listening when the show airs tonight, we have the very first presidential debate. Now, of course, many of us are a little bummed out that Gary Johnson won't be there. Maybe some people are relieved that he won't be there. But either way, it's going to be interesting. We're going to have Donald Trump, the guy that everyone's been writing off this whole time. Well, except some people like Scott Adams, except some people here at Lions of Liberty who have been kind of seeing this coming for a while, against Hillary Clinton. And frankly, there are terrible things about both these people, but it's definitely going to be an interesting experience. And therefore, we're going to gather another crew of Lions of Liberty to break down this debate for you. So that will be airing this coming Wednesday on this program. Be sure to tune back in. Until then, guys, live long and live free.